Good morning. Wow, it seems such a long time back. I think it's 4 years. And before that, the reason why it seems so long is that I came almost every year from 2008. And I would always land here at Joy's place and then fly out to any other meeting that I had. So it felt really strange to land in another place and to travel all the way here, like Mike and Joy said, last night. But here's what I really want to say to begin this morning's greeting. There's been a theme in my heart, there's been a theme in my life, and there's been a theme that the Lord's been just announcing, like those angels did that night with the big message that Jesus was born. And that theme shares something very, very close to this church as well. And I want to read from Psalm 126, verse 1 and 2. When the Lord brought back his exiles to Jerusalem, it was like a dream. We were filled with laughter, and we sang for joy. And the other nations said, "What amazing things the Lord has done for them." Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. What a joy. That's the name of my good friend here. It's been such a joy, this journey, coming here this morning. And Mike and the lady who read the verse out before the offertory, both of them mentioned another one of those themes, and that's about the newness. Forgetting those things which are behind. Behold, I do a new thing. So both those themes are something that I want to include in my greeting from India, from all our staff, with lots of love and appreciation for our partnership with you. And we're looking forward to some great things that the Lord will do. So what I decided this morning, I'm not a preacher, that's Mike's job, but what I can do, which is very cultural, is to tell stories. And I would like this morning to tell some stories of freedom and to share with you some pictures of our work on the ground so I can take you on that journey. I know many of you would love to visit India, and it may not be possible to visit our work. So I've brought our work to you. And this morning, I want to use this time of preaching and of listening to really allow the Holy Spirit to soak into your hearts what your partnership with us is allowing us to do in the lives of so many who need the Lord's hand of rescue. So we'll have our first slide up. And I'm going to just get off this if that's all right. So this is one of our projects. It's called Sports for Life. And we've titled that Sports for Life because we work with inner city boys who have fallen out of the education system, who are into drugs, who are involved in petty crime, and somehow they don't seem to fit in anywhere. And when we say we work with these boys, we're working with 750 boys. We started off with 100, and 5 years down the line, we're with 750. All kinds of ages. Our youngest can be 6, and our oldest is 28. And across that range, we do things with them that help them to come to know Jesus. Because we realize that you can do education, you can do vocational training, you can find them jobs, but the only way that they're going to get life is to find the source of life. And so we introduce Jesus to them through camps. We have Bible studies with them every week. Can I have the next slide, please? Many of them have come to know Jesus. And one of our core activities in this Sports for Life program is soccer. Football, we call it in India. Soccer, I think, in this part of the world. And this is our team praying before their match. We're not just kicking the ball around and doing a little bit of training. We actually have 3 professional teams that we're playing on the Bangalore League. And a lot of people are usually stunned. We take no money for anything. We provide them kits. They come for football coaching every day, except for Sundays. They're there every day in the ground. Morning 6 to about 7:30 and evenings from about 5 o'clock after school and before school, 5 to about 6:30. Next slide, please. We also visit their homes because we realize that they can come to the field and we only get them for 1.5 hours. We can visit the school and we may or may not hear their story. But this is where it makes a difference. This is one of the core activities again, and these are called home visits. And we do home visits every day. Our coaches, the ones who they train with, also visit the homes. And this picture is taken outside the home. You can see the mum in the picture. And most often we have the mums who are clued in, who want to see some change, who are begging us to please do something with their boys. The dads are pretty much in absentia. Drunk, at work sometimes, very little attachment with the boys. They may have some attachment at home, but the boys really struggle with relating to dads. Next slide, please. Like I said, we play football professionally, and we've been in the news. This last year, we had a really good front page Sunday morning newspaper coverage just out of the blue. He called up a news reporter and said, "We want to carry a story." And I thought he was joking because they've carried stories on our rescue, but never on our football work. And we got Sunday morning front page. And that's the headlines. You know, there was Satya on the front page, and then there was our entire team, and they were talking about how we were transforming lives of young boys through the football and education program. The next slide, please. That's the newspaper article. Next slide, please. This kind of a program, 750 boys, won't be possible if we didn't have some really good coaches. And so what you can see there are our frontline first staff coaches that came through the system. A number of them were boys like this many years ago. About 10 years ago, they came into the soccer program from the community, and they've come right through the ranks. And these boys, I must tell you, are so dedicated and committed. They have fantastic testimonies themselves, will share their heart out at these meetings. But what they do is beyond work. They don't work the hours 9 to 5, 8 hours a day. They're there in the mornings, they're there in the evenings, they're there on Saturdays. Someone's sick, they're in the hospital. Someone needs to go for a camp, or someone's selected for some other state, they have to represent it. These boys travel. They're all young boys, budding into adulthood, and we're looking forward to see a couple of them get married over the next year. And the way it works in India is they come to us and they say, "You choose." So they're not even looking at their mums and dads, and they're saying, "If you choose the person, we'll be happy to marry that person." Now that's a big responsibility on us, but it just feels sweet to be in that place, to think that they think you can find a person who will suit them. The next slide, please. This is Devendra. He was in the pictures with Joy in the community. And I just want to share his story as one of the many stories that will be a part of this morning's talk. So Devendra is from one of the communities that we work in, and at age 15, they migrated from a very small community on the north of Karnataka, the state that we're in, to Bangalore, looking for jobs. His mother is a construction worker, and the dad works seasonally. He's a big drunkard. This picture was taken in his house. In fact, I was there that day when we took the picture. And the mother made us some tea and came out. And in the picture, I was asking her actually, "What is it about your son that you are now proud of?" Because she had tears in her eyes. And she said, my son dropped out of school. And he was with this gang of guys who would just play marbles and gamble in the community. And I was so worried for him because my husband is pretty useless. He doesn't do anything for us. And I have to go for construction work early in the morning and I come home late at night. And I'm tired. And I don't really have time to look after the kids. But this football program, and she started weeping. She said, this football program is doing what we as parents cannot do. He's now become so responsible. He actually passed his school finals last year. And it's a tremendous testimony because Devendra is now on our staff team. He's in the second line of coaches and he manages 50 boys. It's great because a couple of years ago, this wasn't even on the agenda. His mom said, I couldn't even think because he's my only son. And I see what my husband has done to us. I was seeing that in my son's life. And now it's just turned around. Behind them there was a whole picture of a wall of gods. So Devendra is the only Christian. He took baptism last year. He was baptized. And I asked his mom, I said, what about his faith? Do you think that his change is because he believes in Jesus? And she said, whatever he believes in, I'm going to support him. Because for her, the change has been so dramatic that she said, if that's working out, let it be. It doesn't matter. And as we were talking, the father turned up, completely drunk at about 11 o'clock in the morning. He stumbled into the house and then he was like, who are these people? What are they doing here? And then we had to quiet him down. And then I said, why don't you stand for the picture? We'd love to take a family picture. And he said, I don't want to. And he went and sat outside. But in the midst of all of this hopelessness is this wee bit of light that is starting to glow brighter and brighter and is starting to light up a number of other lights in the community. Next slide, please. The other side of our work is what you hear a lot about and which we don't talk so much about because it is sensitive, and that is our Ending Slavery program. And we do 3 different things in that. You've seen Joy's holding up that book. We're the only organization, I think in India really, that has focused on children being forced to beg. It's one of the biggest visible forms of trafficking in India. It's right in your face. Everyone who visits India will see a child begging at some traffic light junction somewhere in the city where you have cultural monuments or places where visitors go. You will see these kids begging. And yet nothing much is being done for them. And so over the last year or so and this year, we have actually talked the government, the local government, into doing a study. So the last book that we published was based on an operation, a rescue operation that we did across the city. Now we have talked the government into doing a study to find out how many of these kids are back on the streets. Why are they there? How many have been missing in some other part of India and have been found in our state? The other part of our work is, of course, the rescue of women and girls in brothels. And that part has become increasingly difficult for us. We would, in the last 5 years, do a rescue at least every 2 months. But in this last year, from June last year to this currently now, we've done 1 rescue. And there are many reasons for that. We've had a complete overhaul of police in Bangalore. We've had so many changes that they've done away with the department that used to do rescue operations. So they've left it on us, and we can't do the rescues without law enforcement. The other reason is the political changes in India have somehow made this work go underground. They won't allow us to stand up and talk. They don't want to admit the issue. They want to sweep it under the carpet, and it's growing bigger and bigger. But because they want to keep it hidden, it's making it very difficult for us to use the same strategies that we did in trying to get the information out. So I'm going to share a few of those stories later. And then, of course, you saw the Azadi home that Joy was able to visit. And she was able to talk to every girl who was there in Jan. Since then, Joy, we have had 3 other girls come into the home. We're almost up to full capacity. We can take 2 more girls, and there's no more room in the home. But I just came away from a meeting with a donor who funds that home. And he asked me, he said, "So do you need to have another home, Anita?" I said, "Yes. Yes. Because we will be able to take in so many more girls, and just the system exists. Numbers are not going to become too difficult for us to handle. So God willing, and that works out, we will be able to expand the home, which is a big need." The next slide, please. So as I said, this is just, from a car window, a picture of a child begging. The next slide. Yeah, this again was taken from, I was coming back from some meeting, and I saw this child lying on the side of the road. And I thought, this doesn't look quite all right. It's quite common for the children to be injured. I don't know if any of you watched Slumdog Millionaire many years ago. I was visiting the States just after the release of Slumdog, and a lot of people kept saying, "Do you think it's hyped up? Is it really true? Does it happen like they show?" And I have to sadly say yes. There are many times that I've seen kids whose eyes have been gouged out. When we did the rescue of children begging, there was a girl whose wrists had been broken. And she told us how they did it. She said they took a hammer and hit her on the wrist till the wrist broke. So the hands were just flopping, and she would hold a begging bowl between the wrists. It's the sympathy factor. Increase the sympathy factor, you will get more money. This child, I stopped, and the mother was wearing a Muslim burqa, completely covered up. And she came to the window and she said, "I need money for my son. He's really sick. He needs to have a surgery." And I said, "Where are you from?" She didn't realize who she was talking to. So I got down from the car, I took that picture, and I said, "All right, come, I'll help you." I knew what I was going to do, because even from the window, I could see the bandage was very clean. She said she had traveled a long distance. The medicine hadn't soaked beyond the first 2 layers. The child had an intravenous needle in his hand. He was a baby. So I put her in the car. I said, "I'm going to take you. I will give you money, but I will take you first." And we drove to the nearest police station. The next slide. Next slide, please. The one in the yellow is the kid after we did the rescue. The lady in the picture claimed to be his mother. She wasn't even from the state that we were in. How do you know if that kid belongs to her? She spoke a different language. And like Joy said, I do speak 6 languages. So it was very convenient that happened to be my mother tongue, Tamil. And I was able to talk to her, but to definitely say that she was the mother, even I couldn't do that. We had to do a DNA test to do that. And in India, the DNA tests are so expensive, and it takes us more than 5 months to get a result. So they don't even bother. Who's going to pay for that DNA is the first question. The next slide, please. This is another story of a rescue operation that we did in 2011. Swapna is her name. It means a dream. And it so relates to that verse this morning. When the Lord returned us, it was like a dream. When we rescued her, she was 9 years old. She just, when we pick up these kids, it's traumatic. We have to grab them. We sometimes have to chase them. We have to bundle them into our vehicle. But this kid, we just held her hand and she walked. And for the next 2 days, she never asked, "Can I see my parents? I want to go back home." She never asked. So when she was produced before the magistrate, and they asked her, "What about your family?" She said, "I have a mom and dad." But she said, "I don't want to go back home." And so she was probed, "Why do you not want to go back home?" Every kid wants to go back home. And even if it is an abusive situation, there is some kind of an attachment. This kid had absolutely no attachment. In 2 days' time, her parents turned up. They had the papers, they had everything to say she's our daughter. But the child said, I am not going back. And thank God, because Joy has met my friend. She was then the chairperson, the deciding person. And she and me together, we said, no, we shouldn't send her back. But we didn't have the authority to keep her because they had the papers. And one last time we said, let's ask her. And we said, you need to tell us why you don't want to go back. We need to have a proper reason to keep you here. And she started crying and she said, because they're not my parents. 9 years old. So we called the people in. And then she said, before you call them in, I want to say that like me, there are 12 other girls this man has. He forces us to beg. I have to give him 300 rupees. Now the dollar's gone up, but that would have been like $5. We have to give him that money, otherwise we're beaten. I walk, I think maybe 25, 30 kilometers every day, begging. She's dropped off at a point and then has to walk around the city, and she's manned. Next slide, please. We rescued her, put her in a home. These were the parents, the so-called parents. We were able to file a case against them. They went to jail. This was in 2011. Just last year, no, this year actually, the case came up. And this man's been in jail since then. And we were able to testify about the number of girls that he had with him. We did a rescue and picked up all the other 12 girls as well immediately after that. The next slide, please. But this morning I'm here to share stories of transformation and joy. And this is Swapna at home a few years ago. She told me her birthday was July the 4th. That's something in common we have here. She also has nobody for her. So I signed as her guardian. So I get to bring her home once in a while. Next slide, please. I took her shopping over Christmas. The last Christmas, took her to the shop, asked her what she wants. She wanted a long Indian dress in a similar color, pink. And that's her school uniform. She's in grade 9, having gone to kindergarten in 2011. She started from kindergarten. And her teachers tell me that she's number 2 in the class for a child who had never been to school, never studied. The only life she knew was begging. The next slide. The Lord does bring joy. And no matter how dark it gets, and no matter how this season may not be the one, that we can see that joy. I am here to say that joy does come in the morning, even if morning lasts for the night. And even if it gets difficult, and we do have discouraging days. I have major days when I think, like Joel said, how many more, how long? Now we're just almost like pecking at the big issue. But I have moments like this when I look back and think, wow, Swapna is free. And I want to share more stories. This one is a picture of a brothel. And I want to put that up there because I know many of you will never get that opportunity to see what it looks like. Just a random house bordering a big school, a college, just on the edge of that. So it's just a street and this house, and they were running a brothel from here. Next slide, please. We went in for the rescue. The 2 men in the white are cops, and the man that they've got by the collar is the pimp, and we had a staff next to him, but he just refused to open the door. And we had one of our staff members inside as a decoy customer. We had 2 ladies inside. We were desperate that they don't escape from there. We had to get in fast. Next slide, please. So we improvised. Got a spanner out, a screwdriver from our car, cut a hole in the wire mesh, put my hand inside, broke open the lock. And the police were watching. Sometimes it takes the least likely people to do what God calls us to do. At some point, maybe in the future, I'd love to share my story of growing up totally timid and shy. I would never even ring my neighbor's doorbell. And I can't think of myself standing up in front of crowds or talking or even doing that. Cops behind us. And we're breaking open doors, or we're the first ones to enter into those places. The next slide, please. And this is what we saw. These 2 girls, women, both had babies. and they had been brought to Bangalore City, promised a job in the hotel industry, cheated completely, all their papers were taken away, and they were locked up in this building. And they had to see customers every day. They broke down and cried. They said, "We just want to go back home. We didn't know." They were not your girls from the village. They were not those people who are unaware or who don't speak a local language. They even spoke a spattering of English. The next slide, please. They were brought by flight. So it's not always that these kids or these girls get smuggled into cars. Sometimes it's very much in the open. And because our culture has changed so much that we don't care about who sits next to us or what happens somewhere there, that this could be happening right in front of us and we don't know. The next slide, please. Next one, please. The boys in the check shirt were 17 years old. They were in a school next door. They had taken their exam fees money and come here. So they knew about the brothel. How did they know? The other man had paid 10,000 rupees for an hour with these girls. And he had done it over the net. The next slide, please. This one is our newest project, the Azadi home. The next slide. That's what it looks like from the outside. We had to do a lot of security changes, arrangements in the home before we opened it out. We had to put in grills, raise the walls, upstairs, make sure that the girls don't jump off the building, can't access any fans, any way to hang themselves, commit suicide. Just the thought of setting that up, I was thinking, why am I getting into something like this? The next slide. And it's because of stories like this. This is Malti and her son Rahul. He was 6 months old when she was transferred to us sometime last year, towards the end of last year. And Malti was sad when she came. This picture was taken immediately when she came into our home. She wouldn't talk. She was a tribal girl from Orissa, which is another state, and she spoke a tribal language. So we couldn't even communicate well with her. She knew a little bit of Hindi because she'd been, for some time in the government shelter when she was rescued. She was trafficked by a man who married her, professing love. And how did she meet him? Over the mobile. Someone introduced her to this guy. She fell in love over the phone, just having long conversations, met up with this guy, lived with him for a few months, I think. He promised marriage, promised the world, told her, let's get onto a train and go to Bangalore. And of course, he put her on the train and never got on it himself. When she got down in Bangalore, the traffickers were waiting. And when she was rescued, she didn't realize she was pregnant. She delivered the baby in the government home. And next slide, please. That's Malati a few months after that when we went for the retreat in January. There was such a change in her countenance. She was smiling. She'd put on a bit of weight. And she started to see a hope and a future. The next slide, please. This picture Joyce has shown you, it was in the presentation. We took all of the girls for a retreat. The first time that we've done something like that, everybody told us, you're using the train. What if someone jumps off the train? What if these girls decide to run away? And that is a real threat. But praise God that He's got His angels around and that the girls trust us. That we are seeing a future for them that they don't see yet. The next slide, please. That one Joy hasn't shown you, but she got a bit pampered there. The girls love to do nail polish and everything else. So that's Joy being loved on at the home. The next slide, please. We just celebrated Rahul's first birthday. And that's Malati and Rahul, and she's actually taken baptism. She's come to know Jesus, and she's called her son Daniel. And she said, choose a name. She said, they call me auntie sometimes, Didi sometimes, sister. So please choose a name that will be meaningful for my son. I want him to grow up to be a big man for God. And so we picked Daniel. The next slide, please. And this is what I love about the home. Every individual has a different story. Every individual there has no family. That sense of feeling alone even in that even in that environment. They come in with it. But for a birthday celebration, look at that family. We were all there. We cooked together, we celebrated, we had a cake, we cut it. It was just the most joyous moment. She had tears in her eyes and she said, I never thought I'm going to see this day. When I realized I was pregnant, I actually wanted to abort the baby because I don't know who the dad is. He's left me and gone. But she's decided to keep the baby, and it was such a joyous moment to celebrate his first birthday. The next slide, please. The next slide, please. That's Malti just 2 days before. I think that's a video, so we'll come out of that and go to the next slide. Yeah. So what's our future looking like? And I wanted to end with this. We've done a lot of things. You know, we do vocational training, we do rescues, we run the home, we do the football with the boys, we do home visits, we run a preschool. In all of this, you know, there's that sense of joy in spite of the nights that we have. The season always changes. And we always have that hope that we can see the morning, and the Lord is good. And there are so many that celebrate with us, just like every one of you here. I wanted to give you this opportunity to celebrate with us. That God has been amazingly good to us. Amazingly good. We've had favor with the government. There's been nothing that has gone wrong on a single rescue operation. None of our girls have become so sick that something serious has gone wrong. We did have a girl we almost lost to dengue fever last year. But even in the hospital, she was in the intensive care unit. Her blood pressure had dropped to 50/40. And they said, I don't think she's going to make it. And I stood outside that ICU room and I said, no, she is going to make it. Because God, you helped us to rescue her, not to die in a hospital. She's got a son. She's got a 4-year-old son. And we were not going to accept that. And so, you know, when I share, it's not that we don't have our moments. We have our moments where we fight. We have our moments where we know that together we can do this. And this last picture is our latest in terms of a project. A lot of the women that we work with, not just in our home, but even in the government home, find it very difficult to find jobs. We train them, we put them through training, but somehow they find it difficult to stick in an environment that is threatening to them. So it might be men in the workplace, it might be someone who, you know, just looks at them differently and they will say, I think they know my story and I'm not comfortable. We put a girl to work and she actually was, you know, the man abused her, the owner abused her. So I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I had a few conversations, some divine meetings, and this is our project that we're going down this route of a baking unit. So we're going to do cupcakes and cake pops. And we've even found outlets that will stop that. The girls will be able to work in a safe environment. We've got an entire group of bakers, home bakers, who've backed this. So they've come up with tried and tested recipes, have come down, worked with the girls, trained them. And when I go back, we're going to set up the unit. So I put that up there because it's going to be an all-women's cooperative. So all the way from a brothel to a bakery. The Lord is good. And I want to end on that note to say, we serve an amazing God. And as long as we're on this journey with Him, He is not finished with us. And that story will have a tremendously beautiful end. Because God is about making all things new. It doesn't matter how bad it can be. And we've seen some pretty bad stories. But praise God that those stories are not ending that way. And it's because every one of us serves this big God. And He is about making things new in our lives. Thank you and praise God.